Hello, and welcome to Frank's School. 25th day of the 6th year. First video of 2. I'll do the second video tomorrow, but these are meant to go together. And I guess I'll call this Decentralist Reconnaissance. I hope I spelled that right. Decentralist Reconnaissance. And the result. Although I thought about calling it Ariadne's Gordian knot in connection to what I talked about yesterday. Here's the cat again. In Frank's School, the point I was trying to make, I think, well, no, yesterday I was just talking about how the subjects have scattered, and that was yesterday. But related to that, I find myself, at least in 3 ways that I can share with you quickly, gathering and then assembling, trying to put order to various pieces. And one example is that windmill complex. I'm going to shift that camera just a little. That windmill complex, I call it. Now those are very physical pieces. Some of them probably weigh 300 pounds. The beams I have, and I see, what have I got for pieces, and now how can I assemble them, pieces of machinery and build a windmill and put all together. It's very complicated, and I drew it online earlier this year. Windmill complex, I think I call it, and I keep changing it. I don't have it settled. I still don't think that camera's right. But anyway, that's one thing. Another way I'm doing it is with the Portuguese, in trying almost desperately to come up with the movie Ressurreição, Resurrection. I'm gathering pieces, or showing where I came up with these pieces before I launch myself into the story itself of the imagined movie. But another way is I went on a sort of a quest. And people, you do that, I hope, periodically. You Google things, you start to follow leads and research stuff online. And I guess I could say the place I started with is this concept of decentralism. That's the word I use for it. I wrote extensively about it. Decentralist Manifesto. You could find that in my course. You could probably also find Decentralist Action and Inaction if you wanted to look. Anyway, at some point I wanted to say I have felt like a voice crying in the wilderness. Like John the Baptist, a voice crying in the wilderness. Not that I want to cry out, prepare the way of the Lord, but crying in the wilderness, because I think I have something to say. I found something, I know something, but I'm in the wilderness. No one hears. There's no resonance. I also sometimes feel a little bit like cat, like one of my goats when she's separated. All the goats, if they're separated from their herd, they stand there and they bawl. Where's my herd? There goes a cat in the boxing. Anyway, I got online and I researched. Cat, get out of there. Come on. And earlier I had found Bill Sharp. I'm going to give you a whole lot of names. This is partly for myself, so I don't lose them in this Gordian knot. So I'm trying to put some kind of order to this. I had found Bill Sharp as a decentralist. And he is continuing with the New School of Living. Now it's the New School of Living. Before it was the School of Living. Doesn't live far away. I've never met him, but I've corresponded with him. And he's continuing the work of Mildred Loomis, who is continuing the work of Ralph Borsodi, who is a huge famous name in decentralism. I suppose that's where I ran across this word first, back about 1970, from references to Ralph Borsodi's work. Well, that eventually led me to Donna Brown's book, Back to the Land. And in this course, in my school, I gave a sort of a review of that book. I bought it, I read it. I was, to this guy who's a voice crying in the wilderness, I thought, oh, here's a little bit of Renaissance. She was not trying to say, here's how you do it. Here's how you get back to the land. Oh, and by the way, I think maybe I could tweak that to back to the hand, or back to the hands in my own thinking. But no, rather it was a history of that whole process of about the last more than 100 years, I think. It was great, and I started to reread it. Well, in that process, oh, I know, in describing that book or reviewing it, I described myself as sort of a villagist. And then I pursued that. I don't know, I guess that's what happened. I looked it up and I came up with villagism. Now, I wasn't the first guy that ever said that or wrote that or thought of that, villagism. That led me to the work of J.C. Kumarappa, who had written a book, Capitalism, Communism, and Villagism. And in it, and later I found through my research that he was a proponent and even created the name Gandhian economics. An economics not based on multiplication of wants, I think is the term, but rather, well, you could just, all of these things, you could reference them and look them up and see, based more on satisfaction than wants. Well, eventually, it was about the time that I realized that that book was out of print. Yeah, a book written in the 1940s, you know, but now it's out of print. I have a copy because you can download it, but it's rather hard to read. I thought I want to buy the book, and I couldn't. It was out of print. So I sort of went pursuing things again, and somehow, I don't remember exactly how, I found the name Daniel Immerwahr, a professor in Northwestern University, and he had written a book, Thinking Small. That must have been what, I must have found this first, Thinking Small, and then found the author. As I said to him, I'm too old for niceties. I'm now quite ready to just contact people, and if they think he's a crazy old man, that's fine, no problem. Well, I contacted him, and was very satisfied that he got back to me, and was actually quite helpful. He himself has said that he is not a decentralist, which is interesting. He's a student and writer about history, especially American history, I think. But anyway, I think one of the reasons I pursued that was because that word small. A guy named Shoemaker had written a book back about 1970 called Small is Beautiful, and that was a very influential book. Cat? That was a very influential book at the time. Well, his approach is really not the same, but that's an explanation of how that I found it, and it's worth mentioning this book as well. Well, as he helped me some, gave me names, which tomorrow in 2 of 2 I'll tell you some of the names he gave me, and things to pursue. I listened to his lecture on guano. I think it's Everything You Want to Know About Guano, or I can't remember the title he gave it. But it's online. It's quite a long lecture, and I found it brilliant. I mean, in college, I had to sit through an awful lot of lectures, and you get sort of numb to them when you're in college, but I hadn't for a long time, and I listened to the whole thing, and it was really interesting. I mean, if you think guano, that's just bird shit, isn't it? Yeah, it is, and bat, but it's one of those parts of history that usually isn't told, but very, very influential. And from that lecture, I was led to the name, and he leads his audience to the name of a man named Fritz Haber, I guess, a German. And in he was a chemist, and his ammonia synthesis made guano then not quite so critical, and it produced fertilizer, resulting in millions of people living on Earth, maybe billions, who could not be living here otherwise, fertilizer and explosives as well, and poison gas. And then at the end of his lecture, he gives a really kind of a twist. But by now, I'm in Germany with this quest. You know, he's a German chemist, but I kept sort of following this lead, and I'll show you tomorrow where it continued to go. Bye for now.